Hi, I'm Nick Appleyard. I'm the CEO of TriStar Gold, and TriStar has one project, which is Castelo de Sonhos in Pará State, Brazil, and it's a gold-only asset.
Nick, good to see you. It's been a while since we've seen you, and we're going to get into why that is in a second. But I think first of all, for folks new to the story, can you give us the headline numbers for the PFS, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so we completed the PFS a few years ago, and then updated it last year. As I said, it's gold only. So we have 1.4 million ounces of reserves in the probable category, at a grade of 1.3, I believe. The big important thing is how much money does it make. So, we did it at a base case gold of 2,200. At that, we make a return of 40%, and you're making a post-tax NPV of over $600 million US. And if you go up to $3,200 gold, you're looking at a post-tax return of $1.4 billion. So it's a super exciting, very economically viable project from that point. And I guess the other big number that people like to hear is the initial capital. When we did it this time, or a little bit earlier, May last year, it was around 300 million US, or just under.
Okay, well, we're kind of running a series at the moment called, undervalued or heavily discounted companies that, I think I'd love you to kind of argue for why you think that you are trading at such a discount. If you look at your peers, you're suggesting that you're trading at one of the deepest discounts in the sector. I mean, discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. So, after we completed that PFS that we just went through, we were super excited as a team that we got a great asset in a great location, near all the infrastructure and other mines in the region. So, we were excited. Went straight into permitting. We got our main environmental permit in Brazil, the LP, and within a week or so of us getting that, we received a legal challenge starting from the federal prosecutors relating to Indigenous consultation. It didn't make any sense to us, and initially it wasn't us; it was the state they were attacking, and not us. And the state defended their position, but it escalated last year to the federal prosecutors launching a lawsuit against the state of Pará, and us named as a co-defendant, and that has, been what's been the shadow or the cloud over our company this last 2 years now. And I believe that it's, when I look at our peer valuations, I think we're about an 80% discount right now, purely because of this. We feel like we're getting towards the end of it now. We're getting it resolved, but just to give people an understanding of what the argument was, is in Brazil, you're permitting for a project of this scale is all state level unless you hit certain triggers. Our permit through the EIA process, working with the state, didn't hit any of those triggers, didn't come close to any of those triggers. And those triggers would actually change it from state level permitting to federal level permitting with this Indigenous component studies and a lot more work with the Indigenous culture in the region. As I said, we didn't hit those triggers, so it was never escalated to the federal level. And that's what the lawsuit's about. The federal government are suing the state, saying, you should have sent this up to us and done a different route on the permitting. The frustrating bit for us is, if they had done that, we would have done the second route. The second route in permitting isn't obstructive of mining, it's just a different route, a different path and different studies, and we could have had all of that done by now if they'd have said that in the beginning. But that's where we're at. There's this fight between the state and the federal government, and that's put a cloud over us.
But is the cloud breaking?
It is. We feel like I want to be honest with the investors, in the legal route to resolve the issue, we still feel very strongly that we have no impacts on the Indigenous. We don't hit any of those triggers that are basically related to impacts from the mine into Indigenous areas. We're a long way from them, and we don't have any impact into them. But the legal route, just following it through the courts, is very long and not really viable for us. So the resolution that we're looking for is a negotiated settlement with the federal government. Where so look, we're very happy to do these studies with Indigenous. A lot of the other mines in the region have already done them. So we know what they're like, we know how they go, we know what they cost and the time, and okay, we'll do it. Just you don't, the trade-off for us is let us keep our permits that we've got, and we'll do the Indigenous studies, respect their culture, support their rights, and have that completed before this mine goes into operation. So there's no risk of any negative impact going into them ahead of that study being complete.
Okay, so you feel the clouds are breaking. Conversation's positive. That you're going through a legal process, which takes a long time. I think we're aware of. I think Sarabi going through something similar as well. But the general consensus is that it's positive. It's just a process that you're having to go through. Now that's really, really important, because if you get that, come out the other side of that, you would hope for a re-rate, and the re-rate's important because then the next part of the question is, is this a question of the discounts being applied because of the permitting, or is it being applied because they're not quite, folks are not quite sure how you fund this thing going forward? 70 million market cap and a 300 million construction bill, doesn't math for most people. So what does your company look like with a permit?
Well, just to stress, we still have the permit and it's still in good standing. They've challenged, they've requested an injunction, and they've lost in court every time on that. But with a re-rate, that would allow us, I don't know how big it would be, but it would be a substantial re-rate. But that would easily allow us to raise the money to complete a feasibility study that is still required. Say raise $20-30 million. But if our market cap can go from the current 50 million US to 150-200 million, raising 30 is easy. Get that feasibility study done, and as you get towards the end of that and into construction, I think there's all sorts of options would open up. As far as whether we wanted to build it or whether we wanted to make it available for someone else to come in and build.
Well, let's look at how attractive that does look like. Okay, we're going to assume we can move forward and we get to some sort of resolution around that legal case at the moment. At 3,200 and a 1.3 billion US after-tax NPV and a 300 capex, this has got to be attractive to a lot of people. A lot of, I guess, people in Brazil and maybe even some outside of Brazil. But that's ultimately the end game for you, right?
Yeah, no, I think it is. We don't have the team to build this ourselves, and I think it is. Yeah, the most likely end game is that one of these other companies, and as you said, it's interesting to the people in Brazil, and there's a very obvious sort of half a dozen candidates there. But if we can clear the legal challenges, it also makes it interesting to people from outside of Brazil. I think people in Brazil understand how this public prosecutor works. They know that it's not a binary sort of go, no go. It's just how long is it going to take you to get to an agreement? And as I said, we're meeting with all the right people now. Everybody's coming together. So we believe that's happening quite quickly. But yeah, I think it's solving this opens up the field a lot for us as to who we could talk to better.
But your job, as far as you're concerned, is sort of because this would unlock financing, presumably additional engineering work for further permits, etc. And you've still got a job as a CEO, as a management team to kind of keep advancing this project. To what point though? Yeah, what would you expect there to be a rush of people? Are there people in the wings already saying, look, subject to you getting through this process, we'd be interested in coming back into the data room now, or are you having to start again?
We have an active data room. Obviously you can never disclose too much about what's happening, but we do have an active data room with companies that have access to that now, with the aim more of keeping everybody informed as we move forward. But there is an active data room, so people. The most obvious candidates are very well informed on what's happening with us and the legal process. We know, personally, I know the CEOs of most of them, and we meet at every sort of conference and in between occasionally as well. So, there are people watching very carefully for sure.
Right. In terms of the market, do you think that they've discounted you a lot? Are you surprised by the amount of discount that's been applied to this position, given others have been where you've been before?
Yeah, I am. It is surprising. I mean, we see, I think part of it is probably the approach we took where we, went into a long period of permitting to get a LP. So we took 2 years or so to do that. So you have a 2-year period with not a lot of news. We got the permit, which we thought was sort of the start of the up-ramp, and then straight away we got hit by the lawsuit. So it sort of suppressed us. So we've had quite a long time with very minimal news. But I'm still surprised. We've still got to push forward now and market as much as we can. And that's one thing we are doing now, because we're so confident that we are going to get a resolution soon, that we have, for the second half of this year and the first half of next year, massively increased our marketing budget and the time I'm the CEO allocating to marketing, because I think now's the time. Now I've got a story to tell.
Okay. Am I surprised at situations like this where, its precedent has been set previously that companies don't come in and take a big position in you now? He maybe with bigger balance sheets, so he can afford to wait for this process to run its course. How have you defended yourself from situations like that, or have you had to?
I mean, I don't think I'd say we've defended ourselves. We make it clear that someone coming and offering a 20%, 25% premium from where we are now won't even get considered by the board. But I mean, if somebody now was going to be, more aggressive and go, okay, we understand there's suppressed hidden value there, and make a higher offer, we would absolutely consider it. But that's really it. I mean, I think as a public company, you always owe it to your shareholders to put in front of them if someone is making a decent offer, But right now we haven't been really chasing anything in the last year, because we felt that, well, why don't we make this money instead of letting someone else make it?
Yeah. But as an investor, I'll be looking at this thing going, right, look, your kind of peer group trades at about 0.3 to NAV, right? You're trading at about 0.02 to NAV. There's a super big discount here. What do you think the sort of timeline is? What are the things that need to go in your favor to kind of get you up to somewhere near where your group trades?
Well, the unknown question for me is, I would love to be in a situation sometime between now and Christmas when I can get a press release out and say, everyone has signed off on a deal, the court's ratified it, this project has full confidence to move forward without any hurdles now, and we're moving forward. I don't know how quickly the market will react to fully unlock the value. Obviously you'll get a nice bump on that. But whether you sort of go to the full price as we should have been before, or it takes additional marketing, which is why, I'm getting into every conference and every bit of marketing I can, because I'm expecting that press release and I want to be able to really push to open that value. But I think my guess is it will take 3 to 6 months to unlock completely, and people will want to see that, a little bit of time to make sure it's clean, make sure it's good, see us advancing, see us starting the feasibility study, and once you get that level of activity back in the company, I think people will then start to get the confidence and go, okay, well, let's think of where G Mining with TZ were 4 or 5 years ago, and look at TriStar now and go, okay, well, there's one potential path forward for TriStar to follow their tracks and the success, the brilliant success they've had.
Yeah. Okay. So, and what are you doing with the money you raised recently?
Right now, we are planning a drill program to sort of preempt the feasibility study, looking at extending the high-grade zones around us down south. So we're in the planning for that. As soon as we get through a couple of more meetings that we have planned now, we'll start scheduling that drilling, but probably for October by the time we get things mobilized. And obviously, fighting a legal battle, which isn't costing a huge amount of money, but you're always a bit cautious. But that's really it: is win this, I think get drilling. Then once the value starts to unlock and we can get that higher share price, raise more to do the full feasibility.
Okay. I don't think it's much more complicated than that.
It's pretty straightforward right now.
Yeah, it's a high leverage situation for sure. And as you say, it's a sort of slight waiting game for a re-rate.
But it's really in some ways a tough situation for us to market because we've put in, the lawsuit was started this time last year. And there's been a huge amount of work from us, within Brazil, meetings and stress and working out a plan, and it's all coalescing together now. So that's why we're, more confident than ever that things are going to get resolved this year, in the next 3-4 months here. So it's a super exciting time, actually.
Yep, no, for sure. Nick, appreciate your time today. Please stay in touch as things progress, for sure. Okay.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thank you.